Thank you, whoever gave them to me. She's going to take a rest. George Gershwin lived only 37, 38 years, and in those years, he established himself as the greatest writer of music, or composer of music for Broadway. And after he had done that, he made jazz into a lady with the Rhapsody in Blue, and then some years later, a lot of other, well, we can't call it classical music, we'll call it, I forget the word I was going to use. It's not classical, but it's respectful. And no, it's not traditional. It was just wonderful. Actually, as long as we're talking about the Rhapsody in Blue, George Gershwin didn't orchestrate it because at that time he was incapable of it. Everything he had done had come naturally. He learned how to play the piano by going into, before they even had a piano, they would go into these Nickelodeons, and he'd see the player pianos, and he'd put his finger on it. And when they first got it, piano in his house, his parents were surprised that he could do it. But then he went on, and he wrote a magnificent opera. We think of Porgy and Bess as it was put on as a Broadway show. It is a full opera in every sense of the word. And for the traditional operas, so what? It's in English. Okay. But let me take about 5 minutes to put a little of this together, really about the opera, but a little something different. And maybe by the end I'll remember what word I was looking for. First of all, thank you. Second, the word is traditional. And as long as you're thanking me, I'd like to thank my first music teacher, who happens to be here today. She also was my mother, I forgot.
That's right.
And in her 90th year, she came out here, and let me introduce her. Those of you who've seen me or heard me here or wherever may remember that I have this passion for the music of George Gershwin, all of it. And I am very happy to tell you that if you looked at the program, that the second part, which is much, for the most part, lighter music, does have an aria. It's not a song, it's not a piece. It's an aria from an opera, and it is an opera, and it's called From Porgy and Bess, and she's going to sing Summertime beautifully. And the reason I bring this up is I think they finished, the first performance of Porgy and Bess was in 1935, and it was billed as a Broadway show. And although it is a true opera, meaning it has the arias and it has what's known as recitative, which is they don't have dialogue, they sing the dialogue. It is a true opera. But it took 50 years till it was accepted by the big shots in the opera world because it was in English. It wasn't in Italian or German or French or Russian even. And it's magnificent. What he started in the close to 100 years ago. He was born in 1898, you know, between 1910 and 1920, with magnificent, very original Broadway tunes. And there was a man who was very, very famous at the time, by the name of Irving Berlin, who realized what a genius he was, although Irving Berlin was very jealous of him. I would have been too. And then in 1924, he was asked by Paul Whiteman, who was the originator of the big bands. He said, we're doing something for American music. It's going to be around February, around Lincoln's birthday. It's going to be at Aeolian Hall, which was like a Steinway Hall. And I want you to write something. And in 3 weeks, he wrote the Rhapsody in Blue. And he could not orchestrate it because he had never studied. He was natural. I mean, he took piano lessons, stuff like that, but he didn't know how. And Ferdy Grofé, if you're familiar with the Grand Canyon Suite, did the orchestrations. And after Gershwin made his $1 million on that one composition, which nobody had ever done before, then he took some time, went off to Paris, met with Maurice Ravel, who was, I think most of you know that. And there are two things which have been corroborated in their conversation. He went to Ravel and he said, "Would you teach me?" And Ravel answered, there were two